first question is, should Christians support the death penalty? Great question. It's kind of a tricky one because this is one of those that there may not be like an absolute answer to even from the Bible. There's some places in the Bible where people were punished to death for certain things that they did. Even Jesus himself did not stop his death sentence, right? However, there are other places in the Bible where God showed mercy on people that really deserve death. We can't really look at the Bible and say that, well, God is always for it or he is always against it. There's more within the conversation that you have to kind of tap into. I will say this, when the Bible says don't repay evil for evil, it's talking about us personally. It's not talking about like government rulings. So for example, if somebody murders your friend, biblically, are you going to go murder that person or that person's friend to pay back? Well, that's what the Bible's saying not to do. However, like in Romans, it says that we should submit to the authorities. We should know that like governmental rulings, even if we don't always agree, they're put in place for a reason. And so if there is a death penalty for that person that murdered your friend, that's different than not repaying evil, from like a person themselves. My thought is that all people should have the chance at forgiveness and should have the chance of being ministered to, however long that is. Life in prison, to me, would be better than giving the death penalty. I know in different situations it's hard to do. It's hard to like have an opinion on it because, an example, if they catch the person that killed the Delphi girls, like it'd be very tempting just to say he deserves death. That's not necessarily a wrong thing to think. However, I do believe with all my heart that every person deserves to be ministered to and given a chance to be forgiven. So this is a kind of a cool note. In the 18th century, it was Christians first that established penitentiaries. And their thought process was, we want to put these prisoners, lock them up, but give them a chance. Like to be penitent of something, like you're sorry for it. So penitentiaries, they made these for that purpose. My advice to you would be to be cautious with how you approach it. If they catch a murderer or something, again, you could be completely justified in saying that it should be put to death. That's your opinion on that. But be careful how you, approach it, how you word it. Because, the very foundation of our faith is built on forgiveness and the mercy of God. And so be careful how you approach it, even if you believe that the death penalty is justified for them. So last thing I'll say on this is that sometimes saying we don't know is better than, taking one side of the two that may or may not be right. So like in this case, if someone just asked me on the street, like, should Christians, support this? I would try to explain it, but I'd be like, I really, if I were just to take one side and say, well, God is for this or not for that, it'd be hard to do. So sometimes it's okay and better to say we don't really know the full answer to that. If smoking marijuana becomes legal everywhere, would it still be a sin? Another great question. I've heard this question many times, and in fact, like a lot of times you'll hear, even though it's not legal in Indiana right now, would it be a sin if I lived in Colorado where it is legal? Because I'm not breaking the law. So, people ask that question. According to a Gallup poll, it's about 58% of people in this country believe it should be legalized everywhere. So it's clearly a topic that people have an opinion on and are talking a lot about. Here's the thing: the Bible does tell us this in 1 Peter. It tells us to be sober-minded in all that we do. So obviously, to this question, if you live in a place where it's legal, if you're not being sober-minded, you're not necessarily breaking the law, but you are not following the Bible and what God wants in that instance. I can make a lot of comparisons. Think about something like drinking alcohol when you're 21 or older. Yeah, it's legal. It doesn't mean it's going to be the thing that you should do. It doesn't mean you have to do this. Or, and the Bible talks about drunkenness being a sin. So having a drink when you're 21 or older is not a sin and it's not breaking the law, but too much of it, getting drunk, not being sober-minded, that's where the sin comes in. So that kind of goes into lots of different categories of, this may not necessarily be illegal, but is it something that I should do? And then obviously with what the Bible says, being sober-minded. I also want to point out that God knows what's best for us, and so anytime it says not to do something, it's not God trying to take the fun out of it. It's not God trying to condemn you for something you've done or struggled with or whatever, simply because He knows what's best for us. He knows that not being sober-minded is not going to be good for anybody, and so that's why some of those things are in place. It's not to, again, suck the fun out of your life and say, don't do that. I've actually had a couple people in my life ask me, why would God even, why would He even create alcohol? Why would He even create marijuana? I'm not God, so I don't know. I will tell you that I believe there can be benefits of everything. There can even be, if the doctor prescribes medical marijuana, there can be, alcohol can do a lot more, in this world than I'm going to consume it until I pass out. There's more purposes for it if it's used in the right context. So those are just a few examples, just thinking out loud on it. It's kind of like anything else in the world that, God created everything for certain purposes. We can either use them the way they're intended to be used, or we can abuse them. You can think of lots of things. Obviously, sex was created by God, created for marriage, and if we don't, in that context, then we're abusing it. Even simpler things like food. Like, He created food, we can abuse it. He created sleep, we can abuse it. It can turn to laziness. Like, there's all sorts of different things that, too much of this or not handling, what was created correctly, that's where the problem can come in. My favorite scriptures, they're both in 1 Corinthians 6 and 10. Here's what it says. All things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. Or some translations say, I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial, not everything is constructive. So it's basically saying that, again, just because something is allowed or legal, doesn't mean it's going to be beneficial to you. Another topic would be, maybe you're of age to go see an R-rated movie. You're not breaking the law, no problem, right? Well, who knows? Maybe Satan's going to use what you're about to watch to do something in your life, to attack you, to tempt you. So even something like that, it's not against the law or whatever, but is it beneficial according, from those verses? I can do this, but is it going to benefit me? That's what we have to discern in our life. Same thing for, again, when you turn 21, drinking alcohol. All of that fits into this, I believe, with if marijuana becomes legal in Indiana. And then, got a good old-fashioned Bible question here as the last one of the night for a small group. Somebody wants to know, how were the books of the Bible chosen and why were other writings left out? This is actually really, really important to know, because if we don't know like the background of it, we may just say, well, the Bible tells me so, and it's God's word, and then somebody may say, what about other writings from that time? Why were they not included? Why did the Christians not put that in the Bible? How do we know it's really from God and what's not? One thing you got to start off with is why and how it was written in the first place. The Bible was not written by like a couple people in one sitting in one time period. It was written by over 40 authors over a 1,500-year plus period. It was written on different continents, okay? And it all came together. And so, naturally, there would have been other writings around that time that also may have talked about, events that were going on and what to believe and all of that. So, how did we get the Bible? Have you ever heard the phrase, the biblical canon, before? I don't know if you've heard that before. It's not canon that you shoot. C-A-N-O-N, canon. And canon, it comes from the Greek word measuring stick. So the canon is the measuring stick of what is included in the biblical. So if you ever hear that phrase, hopefully you know from this point on what it means. What was included in the biblical canon? Okay, all the books that were chosen for the Bible. So one thing is the early Christians and then even the later Christians, they had to decide, not really decide, they had to decipher what was inspired by God and what wasn't. What was actually, authoritative and what wasn't. And some important things to know is, one of them is, the people didn't really have to decide what was included. They had to affirm what was already being put in place. So think about that. They didn't have to decide. It's not like they went somewhere and there's all these books. Which one should we pick? Well, I don't really like that one. What about this one? Oh, that fits. Okay. Well, I'm going to choose 66. That sounds like a good number. Put them all together. Like, it wasn't like that. The early church, they looked at all these writings that were already being lived out, they were affirming what was already being lived out in the church. They also had basically, they had 4 criteria. And I don't expect you to, memorize the criteria, but at least to think about the fact that they did have something in place to choose what would make the Bible or not. One of them was, did all of these writings have eyewitness origin? So was it someone writing it who was directly, take the New Testament, was it someone who walked with Jesus and wrote it down? Or was it someone like Luke, who was a historian, who lived during that time and had eyewitnesses talk about what exactly took place? So they found some writings that didn't appear to be eyewitness. It was like 100 and some years later. They mentioned names and they're just like, this happened, but they weren't there. It's kind of like, well, I heard this story one time as opposed to being there. So did it have eyewitness origin? Number 2, did it have universal acceptance at all the churches? The church of that time, even if they met in different places, they considered themselves one body, which is what we should do. And was it universally accepted? Not like today we have a lot of divisions, a lot of differences. They were like, if we all live by this, universally accepted. Third one is, did it have liturgical use, which basically means, are we already learning and worshiping through what was written? And the fourth one, did it have a consistent message? So 1,500 years, 40-some authors, and it all was consistent and was telling the same story in different time period leading up to what was coming and all that. So I can promise you that you can absolutely trust the process. I sound like Chuck Pagano. Didn't mean to do that. Trust the process. Trust the process. You can trust what happened. And I heard a quote one time where the guy was like, if God made the universe, I'm pretty sure he could write a book. And I'm pretty sure he could keep a book like copied correctly and preserved correctly. Like, well, I think he created everything, but I don't know about those copies. I don't know. That's sketchy. I mean, there's an element of faith and trust in the fact that God knew what he was doing with this. And it says in John, the Word became flesh through Jesus. I dare you, and I dare a non-believer to go compare it to other ancient writings in the world and compare how extremely carefully done this process was of making sure that it was the correct Bible. Also remember this, the Bible includes a lot of hard teachings and a lot of embarrassing facts about the writers and the followers. So if they were ever going to make up a story, they wouldn't include some of those things in there. So the fact that those things are in there should tell us that they made absolutely sure that what was happening was being recorded and not, we're going to make up some of this. Absolutely. I'm going to mention one example I like is when he says, "Get behind me, Satan," to Peter. Peter could have easily been like, "Why do you have him call me Satan? I'm calling you Satan." Do something different, like take that out, don't put that in there. But the fact that there's all these embarrassing facts showing how the disciples screwed up over and over, it should show that, that's actually what was happening. So 2 Timothy 3:16, all scripture is God-breathed. That's a very, very important line right there. All scripture is God-breathed. We believe that everything that ended up in the Bible was fully inspired, authoritative from God, and that's that. It is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. So it matches up with history, it matches up with archaeology, it's got hundreds of fulfilled prophecy in it, it has stood the test of time, you can go on and on, compare it to anything else, and there is no comparison of what the Bible has done over time.